Hey guys, MasakoX here. Before we begin today's video, I just want to tell you guys that I have a new shirt out on Teespring. If you want to be part of the Go Crew too, check out the link in the description or on the screen. See you around!
If you wanted to know what Toriyama really thought about stuff, then this interview I'm about to show you is for you. Hey guys, MasakoX here. Now, Akira Toriyama is probably one of the most unique and innovative manga writers that we know in this modern day and age. The subsequent animes that his manga have made have touched souls and minds across the world. Granted, he's not the most sophisticated nor the most profound writer out there, but when it comes to the world of entertainment, Toriyama is king. For nearly 40 years, he has created comics that truly broke ground back in their heyday, and they're still relevant to this day. That and a millionaire, oh yeah. All thanks to a girl who liked to poke poop with a stick. And was an android that could literally break the world in half. What? It's that kind of insanity which endeared him to all of us. It's nice to look back at the series with a warm glow and just imagine the creative process with Akira Toriyama. He must have been an A1 guy, and his producers and editors were swell people and everyone got on harmoniously, right? No! He was pretty difficult to get along with because he liked to just go completely nuts with his stories, and the editors constantly had to take back control. But to be fair on Toriyama, his editors weren't the most lenient, and I can understand why Toriyama would get frustrated. To ensure that Toriyama kept making the manga and that he didn't stop, thinking about those profit margins, his then editor Fuyoto Takeda backed way off, much more than his predecessors. As such, the story became far more wacky and zany than previous arcs. I think you'll agree with me that the Majin Buu arc is a fairly different beast when you compare it to the likes of the Saiyan, Frieza and Cell arcs of Z. You've got Gotenks and his mad attacks, you've got the tussle for the main character role between Goku and Gohan, Vegeta's epiphany, Piccolo's more cartoonish personality, and of course, the Great Saiyaman! Now that's far more surreal, but hey, Toriyama was still making the manga, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters because hey, ka-ching! It's all the way to the bank for Toei and Shueisha. Now, like with all things, it had to come to an end eventually. Come 1996, Dragon Ball Z and the manga were done. And yes, we know that Dragon Ball GT was being formatted around the time of 96, and it was shown on that year and the next year. But Toriyama's involvement with that was far less than it was in Z. Toriyama had very little to do with GT. He made sure that everything got off to a smooth start and produced some pre-production stuff in terms of characters and background stuff, sort of like a passing of the torch effect. But after that, his involvement with the project was minimal to non-existent. Ever since, and actually quite a bit before Dragon Ball was made, Toriyama was quite the recluse. He hated interviews and TV appearances, spurning them as often as he could. Unfortunately for him though, due to Dragon Ball's immense popularity, he couldn't spurn all of them. Most of the time he would just toe the party line of Toei or Shueisha, and not really be that candid and honest. He would just be quite informal and just relax and not really trying to give the journalists the answers they so deserved. His interviews are more conversational than based on discussion, and maybe over the time, the people that would interview Toriyama would adapt to that, so to get the most they could out of Toriyama, they just make things pretty chilled and relaxed, and therefore Toriyama could just settle down and just get on with it. One interview with him, though, is quite possibly the most detailed, interesting, and candid interview to date. Thanks to the people over at Kanzenshu, where would we be without them, they discovered an interview that Toriyama conducted with the Japanese edition of Wired magazine, all the way back in 1997. Now, if we were to go back in time and talk to Toriyama, 1997 would be the absolute best time. His responsibilities with Dragon Ball were long done. He was free! He didn't have to be the good little egg and answering questions like his superiors would tell him to do. He could just be honest and open with the people interviewing him, wanting to know who he was instead of what he made. It allowed Toriyama to be open and relaxed in a way we've never really seen before or really since. He could talk about things he loved like comics, gadgets, everything to do with entertainment in general. It wasn't just about Dragon Ball. If you wish to check out the interview in full, I'll include a link in the description for your interest. Okay, so what does it contain? Well, let me begin with something that's quite compelling. Toriyama has a very big distaste for taking things too seriously, you know, especially when it comes to what his fans think of his characters. Wait, what? That's what I and many YouTubers do. Take the show really seriously. Does that mean that Toriyama-senpai doesn't like what we do? Oh no, my life is over! Our senpai is displeased! Oh, of course I'm silly here, but at the end of the day, we have to understand that Dragon Ball is pure entertainment. It is made to entertain young adults and children. So ultimately, it should be enjoyed for what it is, an entertainment product. I just like to delve deep sometimes and investigate the intricacies of Toriyama's decisions, that's all. There is plenty of stuff to analyse. In Shonen Jump, people could write in and say who their favourite character is in a particular show, as well as suggest ideas to the creators in the magazine. Primitive YouTube comments! Now, Toriyama wasn't really a fan of this method, as he explains. I think it's a bit disadvantageous for those cartoonists who draw stories aimed at adults. I think that the way to read the votes is something they fret about in the editorial department as well. After all, there are cases where the votes don't come in at all, yet the comics, i.e. the tankobon, still sell. I'm the kind of person who doesn't worry about it too much, but if the response was extremely bad, there were times when I'd think, I wonder why? I myself am an extremely twisted person. So if, on a reader's postcard, it was written, that's this, and this'll happen like this, then I'll deliberately go with a development where that didn't happen. And if a certain character got fairly popular, I'd deliberately kill him. Since I did it half-cocked without deciding what would happen up ahead, it was easy enough to change up that sort of thing as the circumstances warranted. Okay, that's kind of mean-spirited, but also kind of fascinating. Can you imagine Toriyama saying that if he was still on the payroll for Shueisha and Toei, and Z was still being made at the time? I think not. This revelation is quite clearly cathartic for the beleaguered artist. He continues, once Dragon Ball got animated at any rate, I've always been dissatisfied with the righteous hero type portrayal they gave Goku. I guess I couldn't quite get them to grasp the elements of poison that slip in and out of sight among the shadows. Oh, perhaps that's why Goku's acting quite differently in Super. Toriyama has way more say in the development of the series. He gives the bullet points to Toei and Toyotaro than they do the rest. They will follow their senpai with much more vigour and zealous than back in the 80s and 90s. Without all those pesky restrictions, Toriyama could really envisage the characters the way he wanted to. This might be a bit of a sour pill to swallow for Western audiences that are more used to the Superman-like Goku character, but really, this is what Toriyama had in mind, so we've really got to get used to it. Now, speaking of Western audiences, Toriyama weighs in on his stance towards the American audiences that grew for Dragon Ball back in the mid-90s. Back in 1997, when the interview was conducted, Funimation was well into making the dub for Dragon Ball Z, alongside Pioneer and Saban. It was gaining quite the following, and this was before the second wave of fans appeared back in 98 and 99. Now what does Toriyama think of all this foreign attention? Well, I am happy, but I can't really fathom it. It's not like I drew it with other countries in mind or anything. It feels like it's someone else's business. Places like America, comics tend to be reading material for children and have an extremely simple story, so that when readers became adults, it's not something they would read anymore, or rather, they all start watching movies instead. In that sense, I think there's probably also an aspect of how people who would be making movies if they were in America draw comics in Japan, because in Japan, you can't eat on the money from doing movies. So yeah, Toriyama thinks that comics wouldn't really do well and movies would do better, much the opposite than it was in Japan. And apart from that, his response to the American attention was a resounding meh. In his mind, it was pretty cool it was gathering attention elsewhere, but really that's not what he was thinking about when he made the show. He never made Dragon Ball for people outside of Japan, and as far as he was concerned, it would just remain in that country and no one would really think about it. It wouldn't catch on anywhere else. Oh, how wrong he was. What Toriyama also mentioned in that statement, and what you can deduce, is that American audiences like manga because teenagers and young adults can identify to that. It's like the evolution from comics to manga. So that means the entertainment form in like comics and graphic novels in general could be sustained throughout a person's entire life. Now remember, this was back in the late 90s. Comics at the time were more aimed towards children, and it's only recently that we've seen much more darker and dramatic elements being written into the comic book industry. Now, I know this is more generalized opinion, and I'm not really a comic expert, so yeah, I could be extremely wrong on this, but I think this is what Toriyama's trying to get at. In any case, comics are far more socially accepted than they were 20 years ago. The last thing I'd like to bring up is Toriyama's views on comics in general. At the end of the day, they're just simply for fun. There were things like running biographical comics on Nobel laureates to go along with the announcement of the Nobel Prize, and when it seemed like bullying in schools had become a problem, running a comic about the bullying issue. I think it's fine to have those things, but I also think that it's not something you should make into a strategy for the magazine. I believe that comics and magazines are purely entertainment after all. What Toriyama is getting at here, and quite emphatically mind you, is that comics should be used to entertain rather than to pander or preach. He's not against the messages that these edu comics were trying to convey, but just suggesting that they shouldn't resort to making a comic to get something across. If you want to read even further into the statement, this is Toriyama basically saying to his superiors, I don't like what you're doing, boss. You should think about stopping that. That's a big deal in Japanese business. You do not mouth off against your employers. You hold your tongue, do what you're asked to do, and get paid. Not here, though. Toriyama is the most lucid and honest he's ever been, and this interview has encapsulated that attitude quite superbly, and that's why I love it. You can see Toriyama's defenses retreat really quickly, as there's no fear of reprisals from his boss. He's made his riches, he's made his magnum opus. I mean, there's nothing left for him to prove. What are his superiors gonna do about it? Fire him? He's already done. Too late to do anything about it, guys. Toei and Shueisha can just wallow in their pile of money, and I think they'll be fine in the long run. So what do you guys think? Did you like this little discussion? Do you feel like Toriyama should open up a bit more about Dragon Ball? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later.